Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a stack of sources, really dig in, and pull out the key nuggets for you, give you that well-informed edge.
Yep, cutting through the noise.
Exactly. And today, we're diving into a really powerful essay I read from PowerAfrika. It's called The Price of the Sun, Reclaiming African Value from the Ashes of Empire.
Sounds intense.
It is. And right from the jump, it hits you with this bold claim that there's a kind of theft, more devastating than taking physical resources, even worse than carving up borders.
Okay, what kind of theft?
The theft of meaning itself, the actual power to decide to name what's valuable and what isn't.
I see. So it's not just physical colonization, it's deeper. The essay calls it subtle, linguistic, metaphysical theft, like attacking the very framework of understanding.
Precisely. And the argument is that this is the most enduring form of colonization Africa's faced.
So this deep dive, it's framed as, well, an unmasking, a fire, a reclamation.
Reclamation,
Yeah.
okay. And to really get into this, to confront this theft, the essay brings together three incredible ancestral voices. This is where it gets really interesting. Okay, let's unpack this bit.
Yeah, who are we talking about?
So it convenes these absolute giants. You've got the revolutionary clarity of Frantz Fanon.
Okay, Fanon, yes.
Crucial, the sacred cosmology of Credo Mutwa.
The Zulu shaman, keeper of mysteries.
Right. And the prophetic defiance of Fela Kuti.
Fela, wow, what a trio.
Isn't it? And I love how the essay puts it, they don't sit quietly around some UN conference table.
No, I imagine not.
But they gather in the spirit of griots and oracles, with ash on their foreheads and fire in their tongues to tear open the false veil of modern value.
Yeah.
Powerful stuff.
Really paints a picture. Okay, so let's start with Fanon. How does his perspective fit into this idea of stolen meaning?
Well, you know Fanon's work.
His insights on colonialism's psychological impact, yes. He argued it wasn't just about grabbing land, was it? It was about imposing this false hierarchy of humanity.
Exactly. He showed how black people were alienated, not just from, say, political power, but from the very criteria used to measure life, to measure worth.
So value, in the colonizers' terms, became a kind of weapon.
Precisely. The black body, deemed labor, the land, just real estate, the spirit, the connection to the ancestral, called superstition.
Reducing everything. Africa's riches become just raw materials. Her people, exports, it's a brutal kind of accounting.
It really is. It lays bare how colonialism strips away so much more than just physical things. It attacks your sense of self-worth.
Okay, so Fanon diagnoses this deep alienation. How does Credo Mutwa, the keeper of Zulu mysteries, counter that? What's his contribution here?
Well, Mutwa's wisdom offers a completely different framework, doesn't it?
Right. He talks about Africa having its own sacred economy long before capitalism arrived, an economy based on something else entirely.
Exactly. Not measured in coins, the essay says, but in relationships.
Your relationships. Okay, expand on that.
In his view, land isn't property. It's an ancestor. A child isn't a cost or a burden, but a future elder. A tree isn't just timber. It holds memory.
That completely shifts the perspective. The essay says Mutwa's view explodes the colonial fiction that value is objective or universal.
Yes. It asserts that value is actually deeply cultural and often, spiritual.
So, a people who revere rain, who dance for their crops, who bury their dead with song, they have value systems, the essay argues, are far more sophisticated than any market spreadsheet.
It really makes you rethink what sophistication even means in economic terms, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It flips the whole script.
Yeah.
Okay, so Fanon identifies the wound. Mutwa offers this spiritual, relational alternative. Then Fela comes in, horn in hand, barefoot. The insurgent energy.
Yeah, Fela. What was his specific contribution to this idea of, inverted value?
Fela just screamed it, didn't he, in Yoruba and Pidgin. Them done sell Africa for peanut.
And the essay says that wasn't just a metaphor.
No, it was prophecy. He saw how African value wasn't just misunderstood, it was deliberately inverted, turned upside down.
How so? What got inverted?
Well, the things that made Africans strong, their music, their languages, their defiance, these were labeled savage.
Right, instead of sources of strength.
Exactly. Cooperative economies, called primitive, and spiritual resistance, things like Dagara rituals, Yoruba cosmology, Rastafari livity.
All these rich traditions.
Mocked, criminalized, or, co-opted and converted. Fela's rebellion, the essay argues, wasn't just musical, it was ontological, about the very nature of being, reclaiming the self.
Ontological.
Yeah.
So we've got these three powerful perspectives on this theft of meaning. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. How does the essay contrast Europe's definition of value with Africa's head-to-head?
Right, the direct comparison. While Europe's naming of value typically relies on things like GDP, stock markets, productivity, net worth.
The usual suspects,
Uh-huh.
the numbers.
Exactly. The essay calls them codes of scarcity, metrics that kind of reduce life to numbers and community to transactions.
And under that lens,
Under that lens, a Maasai elder's wisdom doesn't register. A grandmother's story is, well, irrelevant data. A child laughing doesn't count on the balance sheet.
chilling when you put it like that.
But in many African systems, the essay points out these things are priceless.
Priceless, like Ubuntu.
Exactly. It mentions Ubuntu, that, luminous philosophy. It doesn't calculate your worth by what you have, but by what you are to others, your connection to the community.
And it's presented not as some fantasy utopia.
No, but as ancestral truth, as a real lived foundation for society.
Okay, so if this redefinition is so crucial, what are the implications for Africa's future, for how we all think about value? The essay calls for action, right?
It does, a very clear call. It argues Africa needs to reclaim more than just stolen artifacts from museums.
Needs to reclaim meanings.
Exactly, resurrect the meanings. What counts as treasure shouldn't be filtered through European eyes anymore.
Can you give an example from the essay?
Sure. It says, let the baobab tree be more than just pretty scenery. Let the proverb regain its authority. Let the market square become the vibrant heart of life again, not the shopping mall.
So it's about shifting focus internally.
Yes, and it emphasizes the need to unschool ourselves from that colonial curriculum that taught us only European things were precious.
Unschool ourselves. I like that phrasing.
And it insists, it's not enough just to demand reparations for past wrongs. Africans must first repair the internal mirror, the mirror that reflects what is worthy of love and value within their own cultures.
That's profound. Repairing the internal mirror. It suggests this isn't just about looking back then. It's about forging a path forward.
Absolutely. It's a radical path forward. The essay argues Africa's future doesn't depend on chasing Western tech or innovation models.
Which is usually the narrative we hear.
Right. Instead, it depends on redefining value in African terms. It puts it bluntly. Not all that glitters is gold, and not all that sells is sacred.
Powerful line.
And it argues the continent has to stop exporting its best assets, its youth, its art, its soil, its soul, just for, praise or loans or a better ranking on some foreign index.
Because the system benefits from that export.
The essay is stark.
Yeah.
The West won't teach Africa how to break dependency because dependency is the business model.
Oof. Okay, so what's the alternative? What's to be done?
The call is to burn the ledger. Start fresh. Write new scriptures of value.
How?
Let the value system be sung in drum language, etched in the wrinkles of elders. Teach children to see with African eyes, not just look at Africa through imported lenses.
Rerouting wealth.
Rerouting it in land, lineage, dignity, rhythm, resilience. Let the capital be community, the currency, connection, the dividend, dignity.
That's a beautiful, ambitious vision. But it sounds incredibly challenging to implement.
Yeah.
How does the essay suggest dealing with the difficulty of such a massive shift? What do the ancestral voices say about that?
It definitely acknowledges the challenge. And the voices offer wisdom. Fanon, for instance, would warn this won't be painless. De-alienation requires confrontation, facing uncomfortable truths.
Makes sense. What about Mutwa?
Mutwa would likely counsel that the ancestors need to be brought into this process, not sidelined. Their wisdom is key.
And Fela, I can almost hear him.
Fela would insist, dance while you fight, because joy itself is a weapon in this struggle.
Haha, yes, joy is a weapon.
And the essay stresses, this isn't about simple nostalgia for the past. It's a war against the lie that value is ever Europe's to define.
A war against the lie.
And that leads to the essay's powerful conclusion, the core of it really. We are not poor, we are misvalued.
Misvalued, not poor.
And that's a wound, the essay argues, that has to be healed from the inside out.
Wow. Okay, we've really unpacked a lot there. A deeply challenging argument about colonization going beyond the physical, right into the theft of meaning, the definition of value itself.
Yeah, it's a fundamental challenge to how we often think about progress and worth. That core message is stark. Africa isn't inherently poor, but systemically misvalued.
And the call is for that internal healing, that radical redefinition of worth driven from within.
Exactly. Building a future based on self-defined, authentic value.
And those final lines of the essay just stick with you. The sun was never theirs to sell. It rose first in Africa, and it shall rise again.
Goosebumps.
Right.
Yeah.
So, turning it back to you, listening, what does it mean for you to reclaim your own definition of value, maybe in your work, in your community, your personal life, pushing back against those dominant narratives.
Yeah, what might you consider priceless that maybe others or the system overlooks?
Something to think about.